All right, so here's the thing. Can you hear this?
Yes.
I don't know what happened, Drew, in the last probably 3 months. Maybe during COVID, like all of a sudden my chair has become a squeaky chair. And this is like kryptonite for audio recording. So I'm like, oh, now I got to buy a chair. All right, well,
try some WD-40 or silicone. Yeah, could clean it up.
Should I put foam all around my chair on the top and the bottom and everything? Oh, God.
Well, that would be the obvious answer. Foam on everything, man.
All right, well, let's get this started. Come on, let's bring the energy up, people. And I missed the grunt. Oh, God. All right, anyway.
Next time.
Yeah, baby. Welcome to the Podcast Engineering Show, the show of mistimed grunts, squeaky chairs. But luckily, we have good guests. We have Drew DeVore here today. So, of course, this is the show where we talk about podcast production in depth. We go really deep into podcast production. I've been an audio engineer for many years, and I've also produced a lot of podcasts beginning in 2012, which, I don't know, does that make me old school in the podcasting space? I don't know. It doesn't matter. I've been an audio engineer since 1992. So anyway, if you listen to this show, you'll pick up a lot of knowledge about gear, about workflow, about time-saving techniques, and it's so cool because, I don't know, like listening to the show, a lot of my listeners tell me that they don't always understand everything we talk about on the show, but like over time, it kind of seeps into their brain, and then they actually understand it after a little while, right? So it's pretty cool, actually. So anyway, of course, Barry's with me here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, baby. And the next Podcast Engineering School starts on September 15th, 2020. So today, Drew DeVore is here. We're so psyched. He's an audio engineer for Jupiter Broadcasting. He does editing and production on a number of podcasts, just cranking out episodes. We're going to talk all about it. And he's also the host of a show called Linux Headlines, which is a short show. It's 3 times a week. And each episode is 3 minutes or less, right, Drew?
That is right.
All right, well, welcome to the show, Drew. I see you brought your lightsaber. Oh, geez, I hit the button too soon, dude. What?
Careful.
All right,
put
Drew.
an eye out with that thing.
I know. We'll take that out in the backyard later, Drew. If you could put it away for now.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I'll stash it.
Remember those videos with Darth Vader doing the voiceovers for what was that? For one of the companies that does that gives directions.
Oh yeah, James Earl Jones doing the. Yeah, oh yeah.
He was like, take a right at the roundabout, and he's like, it's roundabout, and he's like, it's roundabout.
Whatever happened to celebrity GPS voices? Now that they're all on the phone. Like Google Maps, Apple Maps, whatever. Like, can you still get celebrity voices? Because those were cool.
Right? I never had those, actually.
I just want Mark Hamill doing the Joker telling me directions.
Oh. All right. Well, all right. When you come back on the show in like a year or something, we'll have that ready.
All right. Good.
All right. So let's do the speed round. So basically, if you're new to listening to the show, we're just going to talk shop. We talk in depth about the audio production. This is not a show for newbies or people who just want to record their podcast quick on Anchor and upload it and be done. This is not that show. But so we do a speed round where we're going to find out about Drew's complete production cycle, meaning from recording, all the equipment he uses, his mic, his interface, his computer, his software, everything, all the way until he uploads it. But I actually have a few new questions for the speed round, Drew, and you are the guinea pig.
Uh-oh.
By the way, where do you live, Drew?
I'm in Savannah, Georgia.
Oh, Savannah. I once visited a friend there. That's an awesome city, isn't it?
Oh, it's a great city, except when there's a hurricane, right off the coast. But
other
than that, yeah, it's awesome. Love it.
Right? Yeah, you're in Hurricane Alley or whatever.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, so we're going to do we'll do the normal speed round in a minute. Let me ask you the new speed round questions. And if you're listening...
All right. We're going with the new ones first.
Yeah, we're going with the new ones.
Oh, okay.
How did you initially get into podcast? And by the way, the answers have to be like literally like 10 seconds or less, Drew.
Oh, geez. Oh, wow.
All right. Just quick answers here. Nothing. And we'll talk more about it later if it's interesting and important. But yeah, okay. How did you initially get into podcasting?
I moved from audio engineering as a career to IT as a career, and my wife started doing a podcast called Sirens of Scream, and I was missing doing audio engineering, so I started editing her podcast.
Oh, that is so cool. Did she give you a hard time? Like, Drew, this isn't sounding up to snuff. Can we improve the sound here?
No, not about that. Some of the editing, she had some quibbles, but the audio quality, no.
Okay, cool. Are you using the same equipment and software today that you started using when you first got into podcasting?
Not even close.
Not even close. Okay. So just real quick, when you first started, what were you using?
So she was on a Snowball.
Nice.
Which we all hate. And I was using Ardor to do the edit. Previous to that, she was using Audacity to do the edit, which, oh God, gives me nightmares.
Yeah. Ardor? I never even heard of that. How do you spell Ardor?
Ardour. It's cross-platform and free and open source.
Oh. Okay, and what has been your... again, speed round. What has been your worst nightmare session or episode to produce?
Oh, geez. Probably the Sirens of Scream anniversary episode where they had basically every guest they ever had on back in one episode.
Oh, my God.
And just blew through them one at a time live.
Whoa. So, oh, my God. And wait, but was everybody recorded on a separate track or were all the guests on one track?
They were all on one track, but they weren't simultaneous. So, it would be one person in, and then they would leave, another person in, they would leave. And, it was just a lot of tracks, a lot of EQ, a lot of really bad audio.
I was going to say, the quality of each guest must have varied widely, and so even the level probably varied widely.
Very much so, yeah.
That's crazy. All right. What is your next purchase going to be?
Ooh, real good question. Does it have to be for podcast engineering?
No. What the hell? No.
I am looking to get a keystep, Arteria keystep for some music production.
A keystep? What is that?
It's a MIDI keyboard.
Okay. For music production. All right, cool.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I'll take this moment to mention that my wife and I just got a rowing machine. We just bought it and we got it 2 days ago. It's awesome. Little expensive because we bought a good one, but
see, I'm selling a cheap rowing machine right now, so
I posted online and everyone's like, "Oh, it's going to make a good it's a good place to hang your clothes or something."
Yeah, pretty much. That's why I'm selling mine, is it's been sitting in a corner for forever.
Really? But I heard a few people say that the way to do a rower is to, even if you do a long workout on a rower, you only have to row 2,000 meters, and that, if you're good at it and stuff, that takes maybe 8 minutes. So
yeah, but I gotta get it out of the corner. I gotta set it down. I don't really have enough space in my house for it. It's just no.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So before we I'm just gonna remind everyone that the name of your show is Linux Headlines. So everybody, if you're into Linux, obviously you talk all about Linux, correct?
Yes, Linux and open source news. It's not just Linux, but a lot of things that are going on in sort of the free open source space.
Got it. Interesting. All right, so everyone go check that out. Links will be in the description. All right, now let's get to the real speed round. So go ahead and tell us, for this one, you could take a minute or a minute and a half, whatever it takes. But tell us, start with your microphone, where it's plugged in, how it's getting into your computer, what software you're using, maybe just quick what plugins you normally use, and then where you upload it to. Just give us the whole picture, but do it quick, and then we're going to spend the rest of the episode picking through it.
All right. So for me, now this is a much more complicated answer if we're doing something like Linux Unplugged, which is our big show. But for, say, Linux headlines, just to keep it simple and quick, I am using an MXL 990, and that is routing into a Mackie Onyx Artist 1-2, I want to say. And that goes through USB, I think it's USB 2, not 3, unfortunately, into a laptop that is sitting outside my booth to reduce fan noise. It goes into Reaper, which is my recording software of choice, my DAW of choice. And I record it totally dry. And I do all of my effects in the edit itself. And what I will do is I will clean it up in RX first, and then I will take it out of RX and bring it back into Reaper. And I am a recent convert to the cult of Fabfilter. So now I am using Fabfilter, gate, compression, EQ, de-esser, and then a bus glue compressor and a master, another round of very light compression on the master, and then into a limiter. And then after I've done all my tweaks and edits, it gets rendered and then mastered separately. I don't master in the box where I do it just on the master strip. I actually render it out, put it into a new project, and run it through a master with some additional EQ, multiband compression, a saturator, and a limiter.
Awesome. Oh my God, we have so much to talk about. All right, so once it's done, what kind of MP3 do you create and where do you upload it to?
So that is interesting. We actually have an automation system set up. So I render it out as FLAC. And after it's all checked and has been listened to and everybody agrees that it's correct, there's no mistakes in it, because we have a team that puts the show together. I've got a co-producer, that sort of thing, somebody who actually writes the copy. So we check it over, and then I upload the FLAC to a system that we have created called Castablasta, and that will take the FLAC and generate several different copies of it. So it goes to an MP3, which goes up to Fireside for hosting. It will also generate a video with a visualizer of the audio that's in the file to go to YouTube. And it also goes to a couple other places, but those are the big ones.
Oh man, this is so cool. Like, that's one thing, like, you are clearly like a deep computer guy, meaning operating systems and all this interconnectivity of computers and stuff. I don't know as much about all that, so the fact that you can automate stuff like that is really interesting to me. So definitely we're gonna want to pick through that. See, a lot of things we talk about on this show, it's because I'm selfish and I want to know the answers myself. But what the hell? It's my show, and everyone can learn from. Anyway, all right. So, wow. All right, let's go back through it then. So starting with your mic, you got the MXL 990. And so we're using Squadcast to record, although you are, of course, recording your own mic locally, which is great. And we're not using the cameras on Squadcast because it's not really necessary. We're not recording video. But when you had your camera on when you joined, I saw your MXL 990, and it was like a different color. It wasn't black. And I was like, wait, what? I didn't even recognize the mic. So what color is it? What model and color or whatever?
So it's coral. I don't think it has like a submodel. It's still just the 990, just in coral. I'm sure there's a SKU for it, but I don't know what it is. Honestly, I got it off Amazon. And the reason I got this mic, I was using an RE320 previously with a repop. I didn't really like it. It didn't do much for my voice, and it was just kind of a pain. It was heavy, and I wanted something different. So I treated myself and got myself this MXL and got comfortable with it. And honestly, I've been loving it ever since. There's just something nice about the condenser feel, especially in this booth that I've created for myself in my guest room. And it works a lot better.
Awesome. So the MXL 990 is a condenser mic, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so obviously condensers have much more clarity than dynamic. So that's one thing. Like right now I'm using a Rode NT1, which is a condenser. And
very popular condenser.
I mean, I've only been using it for like, I don't even know, 4 or 5 months maybe. And I always used dynamic mics like a RE20 or SM7B. And it's like when you hear your voice through a condenser, it's just so much clearer. But obviously it can pick up more background noise and all that. So you're in a booth though. Let's talk about this booth that you're in because you've mentioned it a few times. And by the way, I love that the computer you're recording onto is outside the booth, right?
Yeah. Oh man, cool. It was, when I first built it, I tried with having the laptop, in there with me. And, as you're recording and doing stuff and you've got like a browser open and the CPU starts ticking away and then the fans kick on and they're not, I'm sure there's probably a way to get it where the fan is running the same speed the whole time, but I haven't done that. And honestly, to me, it works better just putting it outside the booth, running a keyboard in, using a Bluetooth mouse, and having a separate monitor that's plugged in. So it's basically like a docked system that's sitting outside my booth.
Nice.
One of these days, I'm going to take a Raspberry Pi and set it up for just a recording machine that sits in the booth with me, but that's some ways down the road.
Okay, and a Raspberry Pi is a smaller computer?
Yeah, it's what's called a single board computer, and it's about the size of a credit card. And it runs on the same kind of processor that cell phones run on. And it runs Linux, and there is a build of Reaper for the Raspberry Pi.
Oh my God.
So you actually can run a full DAW off of a credit card sized computer, run your USB interface into it, and do all the things that you normally do, but you're going to be missing a lot of the plugins that haven't been built for ARM. So good for recording, not great for editing.
Interesting.
But there's no fan. It is all passively cooled.
Right. So then you could just use that Raspberry Pi to capture, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, or some people at least, are doing that with like iPads and tablets and even their phone. Like on my phone, which is an Android, I have the Auphonic app, and it, it can record 24-bit, 48 kilohertz wave file, uncompressed audio. And it's awesome. The only thing that's bad about it, I don't know why, I don't know if it's Android or if it's Auphonic, you can't control the input level.
Ooh,
like
yuck.
What? Hello? Anyone? Like what? I mean, dude.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about the Raspberry Pi too is it's cheap. It's like, $80.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
See, that's something, if it's like a credit card, I could have it just in my pocket. Could you walk around with it in your pocket with a mic plugged into it?
You'd have to figure out a battery solution because it's built to be run off of wall power. But
got it.
With a case, yeah, you could. And there are breakout boards that have XLR that you could get as well. So you could build an interface into the thing. But personally, I'd rather use an external interface where I have a little more control over it. I don't really love this Mackie Onyx, but for recording, it does okay. There's no reason that you couldn't. I just think it would be a little cumbersome.
Right.
You'd be better off with like a Zoom,
Got it. Yeah. It's not the precise tool for the job. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. This is the kind of thing where you'd like screw it into the bottom of the desk and then forget it's there.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And then you just record onto it and then transfer the files off of it. Cool. All right. So the booth itself, is it like a voiceover booth, like Mike DelGaudio style?
Yeah, like super ghetto version.
Okay.
Basically, what I've done is I've put foam on the walls, with just 2-sided 3M tape, and in some cases where the tape isn't holding it enough, I've taken a stapler to it. But the outside wall of it, where it's not up against the corner, is just one of those room partitions. It's a 5-panel room partition that I got off Amazon. Oh. And I glued a whole bunch of foam to that partition so that I can open it and close it. And in theory, I can take it away and store it somewhere if I have a guest coming over. In practice, I don't actually do that. I just kind of close it up as much as possible and say, sorry, you're sleeping in here with my booth.
Yeah.
But then I took some muslin and put it over top and glued a bunch of foam to that as well. So I'm fully enclosed in foam, and it's not perfect. I do also have 2 comforters that I've thrown over it for some sound damping because I do live on a busy street.
Okay.
And that seems to mostly work. Sometimes if a truck goes by, I have to stop, wait,
okay,
and then continue. But
that's pretty cool. So yeah, so like one of those 5-panel, what did you call it?
it's like a room partition or like a dressing partition.
Right, I was going to say, because Ralph M. Rivera, I don't know if you know Ralph M. Rivera.
No.
He has one of those where, like, when he's on camera on the internet, like, he'll just go back there and he'll change clothes.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
He'll do wardrobe changes live. Yeah.
Yeah, like one of those.
Anyway.
If I were to do it again, I think what I would do is put a track on the ceiling, because I've got really high ceilings. I've got 10-foot ceilings.
Nice.
And I would attach like aircraft cables down with curtains to go around that I could just run the track back when I'm not using it and put the curtain back. I think that would be the better way to do it. But This works, and it was way cheaper.
Got it. Yeah, and because the curtains you'd have to get would have to be like really thick, or even double curtains, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they'd be pretty pricey.
So that's cool. All right, so you're in your booth, you're talking into the MXL 990. By the way, how much does an MXL 990 cost about?
That was about $90.
$90, wow.
Yeah, for the price, I think it's a great mic. I was comparing it between the 770 and also looking a little bit at like the AT 2020, but I didn't think that would really do much for my voice. The 770 is a little cheaper, but it's significantly less range, and especially in the places where my voice tends to shine, which is a little bit on the lower end, I found the 770 lacking. So I ended up going with the 990. It's a little bit more expensive, but I thought overall it was going to be better for my voice, and I think I chose right.
Yeah, you do sound good, for sure. So your Mackie Onyx Artist, that's your interface, right?
Yeah, it was what was sent to me when I joined the company that I work for. And when I got it, I looked at it, and the first thing I saw was Mackie. Oh, God. It's okay. The preamp on it, the Onyx preamp, is a little bit better than the Focusrite Scarlett preamp, I think.
Okay.
Personally, it's kind of a toss-up. I've got a Scarlett that I use in my main workstation where I edit. The Scarlett has significantly better pots for the audio output, which is why I use it there. But also, the thing that I hate the most about the Onyx is you get like no gain until you're at about 90% up, and then all your gain is there. And I hate it. So it's very much, once I get it dialed in, I don't touch it if at all possible. So I was a little annoyed when you had me adjust my levels, but yeah, it is what it is, right?
Wait, but interesting though, because, okay, you're plugging in a condenser mic, which you need phantom power for, correct?
Yes.
So usually a condenser mic with phantom power has a very strong output, much stronger than a dynamic mic.
Yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with the output from the mic. It's more the interface itself. Just for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the transistors that they have in there or what, but there's just nothing, and then gain. So you don't get like the full range. If I plug the same mic into the Scarlett, then it's exactly what you would expect. Like it's logarithmically goes up as you turn up the gain, which is normal. For whatever reason, the Onyx isn't like that.
Interesting. Now it has 2 inputs or 1?
2. Both XLR.
And do both preamps act the same way?
And actually, I'm sorry. It's 1 XLR, and then 1 is a 1/4 inch.
Oh, okay.
No, the 1/4 inch input actually seems to be correct. So I don't know what they did with the XLR. And if I didn't actually like this preamp better, I'd be using the Scarlett in here. But once I get it tuned in, it's quite nice, and it does my voice a lot of favors. But
Cool.
yeah, there's just that one little issue with it. And the pots for the audio output, like for my headphones, they get dirty so fast. And so then I get the crackle and, maybe a little more on the left, a little more on the... It's just not a great interface. I don't recommend it. If you can get something else like a PreSonus or, whatever you want to get that's high quality.
Right. So it says in your notes here that you sent me earlier that you have a Zoom H5. Where do you use that?
The idea was to use that for going to conferences and other field recordings. Now, I haven't done any conferences this year for obvious reasons, so right now it's just sitting in a box.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and then you record dry, which is
Yes.
obviously clean, just recording the direct mic and then adding, doing everything in post, which is great. Actually, just to contrast that, I'm using a channel strip here, which is my expensive, Neve channel strip, which I treated myself to years ago. But if you don't have a channel strip, then it's always best to record just dry and then do everything in post.
Yeah, that's my feeling about it, is I would rather have the dry signal possible so that I can do as much, I can have as much control over the signal in post as I possibly can. Whereas if somebody's, trying to do pre-compression or anything like that before it gets to me, I have less control and I have less ability to even out the levels appropriately and all of that. So yeah, for all of my hosts, I demand dry signals, and that's what I get.
Nice. Okay, so for headphones, what are you using for headphones?
So for my primary headphones when I'm recording, I go with closed back, and it's the Audio-Technica M40s. I was looking at the M50s, but I wanted as flat a response as possible, and the M50 does actually have a little bit of a boost in the low end, so I avoided that entirely and went with the M40s. When I'm at my desk, my mixing desk, I actually will use open back headphones, and that's the ATH14. I think I sent it to you. You might have that in your notes.
Yeah, the ATH AD700.
That's the one. I always forget the exact model number because they don't make it anymore. I think there's an X version now. But with those, I have rabbits, and one of my rabbits got to the headphone cable on that. So I actually had to drill that one out, and I replaced the cable with a cable jack, a 2.5-inch cable jack. So now they're replaceable cable headphones.
Oh, interesting. Wow. Yeah. What kind of, how many rabbits do you have?
We have 9 currently. We rescue them.
Wow. And so do you like nurse them back to health and then release them or something?
No, they typically live with us full time because they're all domesticated. They're not wild rabbits.
Okay.
But rabbits are the third most surrendered pet in the U.S. And just real quick, I just noticed here we're not recording in Squadcast anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Probably doesn't matter because
I'm
great? Giving you local, but
yeah,
if you want
why?
your backup, yeah.
Like, why? Like, okay. I'm not even paying attention to Squadcast because I'm looking at my notes and stuff. Oh, this is great.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely. Yeah, good thing we're not
awesome?
relying on Squadcast.
Right.
All right,
yeah.
I just hit record again in Squadcast. Oh my God.
Yeah, what fun.
Yeah,
but you'll be getting local from me anyway, so probably
exactly.
Won't matter.
Like,
but backups are backups. You want those.
And with clients and other guests, like we use Squadcast, and we have to rely on Squadcast with random guests from all over the world, right? Because they're not going to record themselves locally, so
right.
Very weird. I don't know. In fact, I don't know what's happening with the internet traffic and stuff. I think since COVID, something changed. I don't know. Maybe it's just like a lot more traffic because the chess website that I have an account on, which is chess.com, I think they have a lot more people on there now playing a lot more games, but they occasionally have a problem as well, like where the server goes down or something, and it's like,
yeah, and latency is higher than usual and all that.
Yeah. So I don't know what's going on, and I don't know what anyone can do about it. I mean, what can you really do about that, right? If that is the problem.
Not much. Anyways, they're the third most surrendered pet in the country. They're actually right behind cats and dogs, and a lot of it is, people will get them for Easter for their kids and then realize, oh my God, these are a lot of work.
Oh.
And then surrender them. So there are a lot of rabbits out there that are domesticated and can't survive in the wild. And so we end up taking them in. And sometimes, we'll find a new home for them. Sometimes we won't. But most of them have all just ended up becoming ours. And so, yeah, right now we have 9, which is a house full of rabbits. And that's part of the reason I can't use the rowing machine is because there are rabbits everywhere and I don't have space for it.
Oh, so do you have them in cages though, or are they just wandering?
We train them to use litter boxes. So
oh wow,
they just do their thing.
Wow,
yeah,
they're nice animals. We have a lot of rabbits here in Colorado, where we live, and a lot of deer, and of course I'm sure that there's a lot of bobcats and mountain lions as well to keep those populations in check. So,
oh yeah,
but when we walk the neighborhood, we see a lot of rabbits, and it's interesting. Rabbits are, I don't know, life is interesting. Anyway, let's move on to the. Okay,
Get off track there.
After you record your tracks, you do some fixing or restoration or whatever you want to call it, and you use several things to do that. So tell us about that process.
Yeah, I typically will use RX. Sometimes I'm not happy with the way it comes out of RX. Not all of their plugins work great in all circumstances, and in those cases, a lot of times I'll fall back to Acon. Acon has a really nice suite of restoration plugins that go right in the DAW. They also have an application called Acustica, which is quite good as well. So if RX isn't getting the job done, a lot of times Acon will. And yeah, it just depends. Like the biggest thing that I don't like in RX is the reverb, the de-reverb. It ends up sounding way too round. And even if I use the dialogue de-reverb, a lot of times it won't really get it as far gone as I want it to be. And so sometimes I'll do RX dialogue de-reverb, and then when I put it into Reaper, I'll also add the Acon de-reverb just to get that last little bit of the tail out. And that's been pretty successful. Now, sometimes I have to leave a little bit of that verb in just because I don't want it to sound god-awful and super artifacty if somebody's heavily reverbed. But most of the time I can take care of at least like 75% of that verb, which helps.
Yeah, that really helps. And in iZotope RX7, the de-reverb, there's also that checkbox where it says you can boost the dry signal. Do you ever use that?
Yeah, it's hit or miss in my experience.
Me too.
Like sometimes it's good, sometimes it's just, brings out other issues that are even worse. Yeah. For me, sometimes when I use it, it works well, and then other times it seems to add muddiness. Right.
And it just all of a sudden it's muddy. It's not clear anymore, and it's like, just turn it off. So.
Yeah, exactly. No audio is going to be the same as any other audio. There's always something different that requires a different light touch in something else, and. Yeah, like I've got a chain that it goes through. Like I cut the low end, I cut it at 40 with like a 12 dB slope, and it runs through the mouth declicker, which is actually really good in RX. So long as you don't jack up the sensitivity, it's pretty decent at pulling out a lot of the little stuff. And now watch, you're going to run it through a mouth declicker and it's just going to be silence.
Actually, I probably won't. I try not to use the mouth declick unless someone is bad with their mouth clicking, and you're certainly not. So
Yeah. Well, I typically, I do it really conservatively. I have it down with a sensitivity of like 2.
Yeah.
And that seems to work pretty well in that, with a lot of these shows, I'll get, numbers of tracks where, like with Linux Unplugged, like I said, I can have upwards of like 7 tracks. And, a lot of times I don't want to go through each one and say, okay, do I really want the mouth declick on this particular person? I'll just batch process them all, because that's a show where it gets recorded live on a Tuesday. And we can talk about how we record that live because it's pretty interesting. But after it's done recording, I turn around and I have it out, fully edited, mixed, mastered, the whole lot within 5 or 6 hours. And I just don't have the time a lot of times to really give each individual track its full attention. Right. And so I'll just batch process them all. So they'll go, EQ, demouth click, and then they'll go through very light automatic dialogue de-reverb twice. And then I'll go and see if I need to do, dialogue denoise twice.
Okay.
And then I'll go through and see if I need to do any more specific dialogue denoising before putting it back in the project. I try not to get it too dry with the denoise, if you pull out too much of the atmosphere, it just sounds hollow.
Yeah.
So I try to, keep as much as I can in without it sounding like these people are, as many miles away from each other as they are.
Right. Okay, so after you clean up everything, then you bring everything into Reaper, right? Reaper's your main DAW?
It is. Yeah, they have a Linux version, which is awesome. And it's very stable for me. I have no problems with it. I do have some problems with, because I'm on Linux, not everybody makes plugins for Linux. So like with Fabfilter, I have to wrap them in something called Wine, which it translates the system calls that would be made to Windows to Linux system calls. And it works great like 95% of the time. But every now and then a plugin will crash and I'll have to, reload the application. And, I save and I auto-save. So usually I don't lose much work. But, yeah, every now and then I do have a crash.
Right.
But, yeah, so I bring it into Reaper and I line it up. And I've got that host bus. And then I've got the mastering bus. And then each host gets their own chain of effects, which will be that standard gate, which I use as an expander instead of a gate because I don't want it to go all the way out.
Right.
Then it'll get compressed, EQ'd, de-essed, and then it'll go into that host bus.
And the host bus, just describe that for everyone who's listening.
So in old analog days, you would have something called a VCA, where you would assign tracks to a VCA, and it would be a group. So in this particular instance with Reaper, it's called a folder. But the process is essentially the same. You just drag these tracks up, and directly underneath where you want it to be a folder, they'll go just a little bit to the right, and then all the audio will route through that folder before it goes to the master. So you can have a whole bunch of tracks share an effect. And you can also do the same thing with sends, but with Reaper, they've just made it a little easier where you can literally just drag things on top of each other and have them route through each other.
Right. Yeah, so it's a subgroup. So let's say you have 2 hosts on the episode. You can have both their voices controlled by a third fader, and you can add effects to both the voices on that third channel. And
right.
Yeah, it's like a subgroup. It's basically like you're sending the 2 voices to a third subgroup track, and then you're processing it more there.
Right. And so what I'm doing there, because I like to use pretty light compression, I don't like to lose the dynamic range of the host, but I still want them to be audible. So I'm doing some moderate compression on the tracks themselves so that we keep the dynamic range, but we're not wildly out of sync with each other as far as volumes. And then it goes through what's commonly called a glue compressor, where both of the tracks just kind of get their volumes evened out without affecting too much of the dynamics before it goes to the master.
Right. And so you have that track for the hosts, and then you also on your master bus, which is obviously the mix of everything, you also have effects on that master bus.
Yeah, and I do more glue there. And the specific reason I do that is because I have a soundboard typically that will be off of the host bus. It's totally separate. And I don't do any effects or any processing on the soundboard whatsoever. I make sure that the tracks are the way I want them before they go into the DAW. So that will get routed directly into the master along with the host audio. And so I do a little bit, it's like super, super light glue on that master bus. And then it goes into a limiter, which I have set for like minus 23 LUFS, which is loudness units full scale. And it's also limiting down to minus 6 dB so that I have some headroom in the master.
Nice. Okay, so then you mix it in Reaper, and so let's talk about plugins that you're using. You were talking a lot about Fabfilter, and I love Fabfilter plugins as well. But let's come back to Fabfilter. What other do you use? What other plugins do you use in Reaper?
Sure. So it's the gate is the Pro-G,
right?
And that is the Fabfilter gate. And I'll just spoiler alert, it is all Fabfilter all the way down now.
Oh, okay. Okay. Cool.
So so it's going to be Pro-G, then Pro-C2, and then Pro-Q3, and then Pro-D, I think is a de-esser.
Pro-De-ess.
Pro-De-ess. Yeah, Pro-De-ess for the de-esser. And then Pro-Q3 for the glue compression on the bus, Pro-Q3 for the glue compression on the master, and then Pro-L2 for the limiter.
Right. I think you said Pro-Q3 for the compression, but it's the C2. Yeah,
Pro-C2 compression, Pro-Q3 for EQ.
Got it, yeah.
So on and so forth. Yeah.
So that's cool. So you're using only Fabfilter plugins within Reaper?
Yeah, currently, yeah. It's
Nice.
I did it as a test, and I liked the results. So I dug in more. I learned more about the plugins, learned more about the different styles of compression, that sort of thing. And what I landed on was going clean all the way down through the mix. So it's the clean version of the gate, clean version of the compression, clean version of the limiter, which I think is called modern now, to get the most transparent results possible before going into my master.
Yeah. And so on the Fabfilter Pro C2, which is the compressor, the C2, I heard, and I've seen it once. I opened up mine because I also have all the Fabfilter plugins. I opened it up. There's some mode. It's called the golden transparency mode or something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I found it, but I haven't tried it yet. Have you tried that one?
Yeah, try that on your mix bus.
Oh.
That's essentially what I'm using is it's basically a real light glue compression. That's what I'm almost using. Like basically I took that preset and then modified it just a little bit to suit what I needed it to do. And that's what I'm using for the mix bus glue. Mm-hmm.
Got it. And so, okay, so you mix it, you have you're mixing it in Reaper with all your Fabfilter plugins, and then you mix it down. And you mix it down to a WAV file?
Mono FLAC, because Reaper can handle FLAC natively. So just to save myself some disk space,
okay.
I've got plenty of processors, so no problems decoding FLAC on the fly. Then I will take that FLAC and load it back into Reaper on a new session and put in my mastering chain.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about FLAC for 1 second. FLAC, describe FLAC for everybody, please.
So everybody knows MP3, and MP3 is what's called a lossy codec. And essentially what it's doing is trying to dig out frequencies that the human ear can't hear or can't hear very well, and compresses the whole thing down so that you're getting rid of information that humans can't typically hear. FLAC doesn't do that. FLAC will determine where the silence is and get rid of the information where the silence is. Whereas, WAVE is just PCM. It tells you everything about the audio through the whole track. FLAC will get rid of the stuff that doesn't matter at all. And you get a lossless version of that wave, but it's still compressed. So
Right.
FLAC is literally the free lossless audio codec is what it stands for.
And a FLAC file is smaller than a wave file, but it's about what, like 65% the size or something?
Yeah, something like that. It depends on how much compression you use. You can do light compression on it. You can do full compression on it. I typically do full compression. So it ends up being fairly small, especially if it's on a track that somebody doesn't talk very much. It will be much, much, much smaller. Whereas if it's a track where somebody's talking through the whole thing, it'll be much larger. It just depends on what audio information is there for it to compress.
I see. Okay, so you mix it down to a FLAC, and then you start a new session in Reaper for your mastering step, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll pull that FLAC in, and I will apply, master bus effects to do the master. And it's nothing too special. I start with a Pro-Q3 just to dig out the lows a little bit more. Basically I run minus 30-ish as a 12 or 24 dB slope. And then there will be a little cut at around 100. And sometimes I'll do a little boost around 200. Sometimes I won't. It depends on who's hosting. Usually do a little dip at 350. And then a little cut at 4K. And a little boost at just the high end, above 4K. And when I say little, we're talking under 1 dB.
Right.
So, of course, the high pass is a high pass, but everything else is, 1 dB or below as far as how much I'm adjusting it. And I do make use of the dynamic EQ in Pro-Q3 for that 100 dB cut, just to keep anything from booming. A lot of times when people listen in their cars especially can be very boomy with bass. So I tend to dig a little bit more out of that than I typically would for, like, say, music or something like that, just because lower timbre voices will, really boom things. Mm-hmm. And you don't really want that, right? So
right.
From there, it goes into a multi-band. Did you have any questions about the EQ?
Yeah, well, the dynamic EQ is awesome. Maybe we'll talk about that next time in a little more depth, but that's awesome the way you're using that. So yeah, go ahead, go to the Pro MB.
So the Pro MB for multiband compression, and it's real light compression. It's just to sweeten up the overall mix a little bit, lower those lows a little bit more just to keep them tame, maybe bring out a little more highs. That honestly, of everything in my mastering chain, that's probably what gets touched the most, is just determining, okay, which host do I have? Where are their voices the sweetest? Let's bring that out. So that's what I use a multiband for.
And how many, because in the Pro MB, which again is a Fabfilter plugin, you can use up to 6 bands, I believe. How many bands do you normally use?
Usually 4.
Okay.
That's kind of a classic, typical, most people who, like me, go back to like analog days. You're used to like a 4-band multi. And so to me, it's just, my brain just says, oh, obviously I just use 4, but right. You could use more if you want, or fewer.
Yeah, I dialed in a 6-band aggressive compressor, settings in the Pro MB. And then I adjust the percentage of parallel compression. So I'll set the compressor, each individual band, I'll set it to be very aggressive. But then on the plugin overall, I might only use like 20% of the plugin and leave 80% dry. So I can just sort of add in a little bit of more aggressive compression to taste. Anyway, that's one of many ways to do it. So
man, that's clever. I might have to try that out. I like that.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So finish the plug. Well, you know what? I want to ask you now. You open up a separate session for mastering.
Yes.
Why?
Yeah.
I think I know why, but I want to hear you say it.
Well, so I could, in theory, through a series of buses, achieve the same results with the master track in my mix. But, and to me, I just don't like having that master track with all of the effects disabled while I'm mixing, because I don't want to master while I mix. I don't think it's a good solution. I want to have the best sounding mix possible coming out, and then I want to sweeten it in the master. So a lot of it is just habit of mix first, master second, and separating that process in my brain. But part of it is I do use that master track while I'm mixing just as a bit of glue. Right. So rather than having, two buses where one bus is flowing through the second bus to get to the master, I just cut all that out. I render twice, and it works.
Right. Yeah, I actually agree with you, the way you're thinking about it, because there's something about the mixing phase where you're doing, like, the process of mixing, you're doing certain things to get the mix right. And that's like one step of the production. And then the mastering step is really a separate step. And in fact, as you know, and as most people know, in music, the mastering engineer, he's not even there. Like, they just send him the files and he masters it completely away from everyone else.
Yeah, they rarely even send him the stems.
Yeah.
It's just, the fully mixed track. And then he
the beauty
goes off and does what he does. Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason for that is the mastering engineer gets to hear it with fresh ears. Mm-hmm. And then gets to just do a little more tweaking to make it pretty much perfect. So what you're doing, and I do something very similar, that's what you're doing. You're keeping your mixing tasks in one phase, and then once you do that, then you move on to the mastering step, and it just even in your mind, it's just a good separation, and it allows you to fix just those, maybe not fix, but allows you those few final tweaks to make it, just right.
Really pop. Yeah, exactly. Well, and I'm a big proponent of your ears are muscles, and they do need to take breaks. So, I try to every hour or so while I'm mixing, step away and just, go read a news article or something and just let my ears breathe for a minute. And that's also true between the mix and the master. While it's rendering, that at least forces me to take a break, right? Even if it's just 10 minutes, that's still something. A lot of times, if I have the ability to, if it's not due right away, I'll step away for 20, 30 minutes, come back, and then master.
Right.
That way, my ears have taken a break. My brain has taken a break. I've forgotten most of what I've just done. Yeah. And I can approach it fresh.
One thing I've done several times, and just because it happened that way, is I'll basically be producing an episode and I'll finish everything. But I won't have time to render it and actually finish it. So literally I'll just save everything, and then the next day when I have time to finalize it, I'll open it back up, and when you press play, it's like, whoa,
What was I doing yesterday?
Yeah.
I need to fix this.
Let me tweak this a little bit. Jeez.
Yeah, you all of a sudden hear all of the crap that your brain just kind of tuned out the previous day, and it's like, oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Oof, yuck. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I actually do what you don't do. I actually, on my master bus, I just have a compressor, and I use that as my mastering step. But I think I do more aggressive, or I think I do more processing on each individual track, maybe, than you do. So then on my master bus, I just use a compressor and maybe something else to as my mastering compression, and then I just render it at a Reaper, and then that's it.
Yeah. So what I end up doing is, after the multiband, I actually run it through a saturator.
Nice.
And I'm using Saturn from
Saturn,
Fabfilter.
yes.
Oh, it's so lovely. I was using Klanghelm SDRR2 beforehand, which is good. It's a really, really good saturator, but oh man, Saturn is just, it can do anything, man. Like, and I'm just hitting it at like 10%, and it sounds so sweet.
Yeah.
So I'm using like a gentle or a warm tube on the low end and clean tape on the top, and it's good.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I also like Saturn a lot. And Saturn 2 now. Saturn 2.
Right. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And then it just goes through Pro L2 to bring it up to -14 LUFS and -1 for the true peak limit. And oversampled, of course.
Right. So. Oversampling. Oh, man. I turn on oversampling on every plugin that I use.
I don't. And the reason is because it will introduce some latency and will extend my render times, which isn't a huge deal. But, for the most part, until I get to that final limiting stage, I am not in danger of clipping. So because I mix lower, I don't have to oversample because, what you're doing with oversampling is you're looking for those inter-sample peaks. And sometimes those can go above where the sample point is in your sampling rate. So
the
oversampling.
Other thing oversampling does actually is sometimes when you use effects like saturation, they can, if you do not use oversampling, it can actually introduce lower harmonics.
Yeah. Well, and you can get greater resolution in your plugins, that sort of thing.
Right.
So for plugins that can use it, yes. But for like a gate or a compressor where I'm just altering, the volume of it and the dynamic range, typically, I don't use oversampling for those because it's not going to really do me any good. It's just going to tax my processor more.
Right.
But yeah, for Saturn, I turn on the high quality, and which I'm pretty sure it's just oversampling.
Right.
And for the limiter, I turn on the oversampling 4 times. Right. I don't go all the way up to 8 because, come on. But but 4x is plenty for what I'm doing, especially going down to a 96K MP3 in the end. So
imagine if there was a client who in the contract they're like, oh yeah, I want to use 8 times oversampling in the Pro L2.
And then you just shoot the email back with one word, why? If you can explain it, maybe I'll do it.
Right.
But there's very little chance that you're going to explain this.
It'll be in the contract right underneath where it says, we want
green M&Ms only.
Yeah. No blue M&Ms. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Right.
Oh my God.
Oh God. I used to, so I was the head audio engineer for, Cherokee Harris Casino in Cherokee, North Carolina. And, we would get some interesting riders, but one person actually did put in the M&M thing. And I made the new lighting guy do it.
Right. People just, they call it trolling now. That's what you would call that.
Well, I mean, it does serve a good purpose for a touring crew because they make sure that you actually read the rider.
Right.
Because a lot of places just don't. They're just like, people will show up and it's like, I didn't ask for this keyboard. I need, the Yamaha, whatever. So
that makes sense.
It just makes sure that, hey, they're actually getting, what they asked for.
Totally. Mm-hmm. All right. So then you master it and then you render it out of Reaper in the mastering session how do you render it out of Reaper there?
FLAC still.
Still FLAC. Okay. Oh, that's right. FLAC. And then you send it to your automated system.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then that does all the processing in the background, publishes it. Of course, I do my final checks on the metadata, make sure the description's right, the hosts are all right, the links are all active and aren't dead, that sort of thing before it publishes. Because when Casta finishes its processing, it will flip it to public at the specified time, of course. But, it takes care of the publishing for me, too. So I just have to make sure that everything is, on the up and up and ready to go.
So question, you're uploading the FLAC and then castablasta is doing all this stuff, but and then the MP3, which goes to Fireside, is that MP3 being tagged? And if so, where?
Yes. Yeah. So, you'll like this actually if you're a Reaper user. You know how you can spit out your chapters as CSV?
Actually, no, I didn't know that, but that's cool.
Okay. Yeah. Check this out. As you're going through the episode, I think this is the default. I don't know. I modify so much of my stuff in Reaper. It's crazy. But Shift M for me, I think that's the default, will drop a marker, right?
Oh, right. Yes.
So at the end of a session, you can bring up your list of markers, right click, and do an export. And you can choose either text or CSV. So we have in this automated system where I upload that CSV, I don't have to modify it at all, and it will automatically create chapter markers for use in whatever podcast players support them.
Wow.
So my chapter markers become chapters.
And what about wait, does each chapter marker have to be named?
Yes.
Okay. And where do you do that?
Actually, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't, but if it's not named, it's just going to show as a numerical timestamp value.
Got it.
With no, like I actually put, intro, here's this story, outro. All of that stuff's tagged so that people can skip around in the episode. And it shows up on YouTube with clickable chapter markers there too.
Oh, that's sick.
Yeah, it's cool.
That is cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so Fireside is what you're using for your hosting. How do you like Fireside?
It's pretty good. Maybe one of these days we'll get the network feature. That's the big thing we're waiting on.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
So they've been teasing a thing where you can have shared web content where all of your shows that are hosted on Fireside can be under an umbrella of the network.
I see.
And that's been, it's kind of a joke of when it's coming because they've been teasing it for, 2 years, something like that. But but other than that, it's good. I mean, the reason that we can do all this stuff with Castablasta is because Fireside has APIs that we can tie straight into. I think that's true. I didn't write the code. I'm not a coder by any means, but the guy who did it is able to, hook right in where basically you give it a slug and an episode number and, links. Like we have a system set up where I can literally drop in the show doc and all of the links that are in the show doc get pulled out and put directly into Fireside as links, which is pretty cool. So I don't have to manually type those in, which is great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, we have a ton of automation set up for that, which makes our lives way easier.
That's
my
awesome.
My publishing chain is super simple. Literally just drag stuff on, click upload, done.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna have to. I would love to do like a video episode where maybe you can show us these things and all that. And there's actually several guests over the past few months that I want to do video episodes with. The problem I'm having with video episodes is that if we do it through, doing it through Zoom is horrendous.
Okay.
But doing it with StreamYard is okay. But then the guest, would have to somehow share their system audio through StreamYard. And unless you're on a Mac and you're using Audio Hijack or something like that, you can't do that. So anyway, there's weird technical issues with that.
Yeah. See, that's easy in Linux. I can do that all day, every day. You don't even need like Black Hole or anything on Linux. It's just, we've got something called Jack where anything that's Jack aware, you can just patch them directly like their virtual audio cables, kind of like Rewire or Black Hole or stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome.
Awesome.
And
but you guys don't have that, so, I'm sorry.
Well, I know. Well, we have to buy an app to do it, but I don't know. Right. Like I think because I see a lot of streamers need to do this too. They need to, like, in the middle of a stream, they might want to pull up a video and show a video, and it's like I think I think it's going to become easier in the years to come. Like over the next 2-3 years, I think a lot of this stuff is going to become a lot easier. I don't know how, but a lot of people are doing a lot more with their computers, with their audio, and with streaming online. And like the way it is now, it's okay. The way it was 5 years ago, you probably couldn't even do a lot of this 5 years ago. It would have been a nightmare. But I think I'm hoping soon that'll all this will be a lot easier. I don't know. What do you think?
OBS goes a long way to solving some of these problems.
Okay.
That's Open Broadcasting System. I'm not sure what the S stands for, but it's video streaming, audio streaming platform for cross-platform. It's Mac, Windows, Linux.
It's free too, right?
It is free, yeah. So, let me give you an example. How we route stuff for Linux Unplugged is pretty interesting. So that's a live show. It's recorded live. With community involvement. So we have a service called Mumble. It's sort of like TeamSpeak or just any kind of voice chat system. And so that gets routed into the show. We also have Source Connect, which we use for the main hosts. And then there's the two guys in the studio. So in the studio, that's a computer that is running Source Connect, Mumble, and Reaper all at the same time. And all of these things are routed into Reaper via jack. And it's also connected to the Behringer X32 that they have in the studio there, which is their control interface and their mic preamps and all of it. You know, they just get 32 channels dumped into Reaper. And they're able to route all of that stuff around. Now that goes out from an output on the mixing console into another computer, which is running OBS. So OBS then streams the video content, which is usually just like the chat room that's going on. But sometimes there's a video or something that Chris will want to show. Chris is our main host. And that streams out to Restreamio, which then splits it out and it goes to YouTube, it goes to Twitch, it goes, wherever you want it to go from Restreamio. And OBS allows us to do that. So, I mean, it's a complex system, but it works really, really, really well and low latency.
Right. That's great. So, Drew, this has been tremendous. Again, we're going to have to come back someday. We're going to we'll dive into some more things and I think we'd do a video version would be great too.
Yeah, we may have, we should get the guy who actually wrote the Castablasta stuff to join me. He's still around. His name is Wes Payne. He's a really talented engineer, and he's pretty good on audio too. Like at Jupiter Broadcasting, he was kind of my second. As far as audio,
that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe he'll join us and he can share some of what he's done. The stuff is open source, so people can take Castablasta and modify it to their needs and do their own Castablasta stuff. So, yeah.
Oh, man. All right, and all this open source stuff is so interesting to me. And there's a few things I wish I could create. And so, Drew, you and I might have to talk offline because I'll tell you what I have in mind, and if there's any open source stuff that we can cobble together to do what I want to do, that would be awesome.
Yeah, man. Email me.
All right, cool. All right, well, there's one last thing we got to do, and everyone listening, you have to do it too. We're all going to yell, "Sound great." Are you in a position where you can? Oops, that's my intro music. Are you able to yell right now, Drew?
Yeah. Let me just back up a little bit.
No. We don't. We want all the distortion.
Okay. All right. We'll clip it.
Yeah. So anyway, Drew DeVore, audio engineer for Jupiter Broadcasting. Check out his show Linux Headlines. And what's the other show? Linux
Unplugged is the other one. I also do editing for Self-Hosted and Brunch with Brent.
There you go. And we're gonna start the music over because we didn't have enough time to get it all.
Sorry.
No, it's totally fine. Right? Remember the board operators in radio? God. That's what they would do. Anyway. So anyway, this has been great, Drew. We'll definitely connect again. And thanks for being here. We really appreciate you sharing everything, brother.
Yeah, totally. Anytime.
Right, now we're going to yell "Sound great." And we're all going to yell. And even if you're in your car listening, I want you to yell so loud that the car next to you looks over and is like, "What?" All right, go. Sound great!
Walk away from me and you Why do you play it out on me now? You like to lose control where it's quite a feeling, isn't it? They float and drifting down now. You tell me that you found something better. How should I respond to that? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. What do you want me to say? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. You react so angry. You change your attitude where you say I just don't get it now. You say your eyes so far away now. You gave up on me where some chance you gave me gave away. You say I wouldn't understand now. You tell me that you found something better. How should I respond to that? Oh yeah, I say now it's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. What do you want me to say? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. You react so angry. I want you to know you will never always be true. I've gone over all we've been through. Doesn't seem that long a time now. Things we did still hold their meaning. And does it mean it's still the same? You're pushing me away. You worked your theories now where you getting worked up on your now. You work your way around somehow now. Yes, it hurts me now where that you don't talk to me now. Now that these words have split apart now. You tell me that you found something better. How should I respond to that? Oh yeah, I